This panel is to discuss some of these ideas from a scientific point of view and from a psychological point of view especially, as to discern why do people believe in something that doesn't have much evidence, or in fact in some cases the evidence contradicts the belief. So, and my third panellist doesn't need much of an introduction. I'm sure most of you have already come here especially to see him. Richard Dawkins, the retired professor who's still working, apparently.
I think there's probably a love of mystery which can go either way, and what we might try and do is harness that love of mystery and steer it in the right direction. The love of mystery can show itself in that awful quotation from Hamlet, "There are more things in heaven and earth a ratio than are dreamt of in your philosophy," which is often quoted as a sort of anti-scientific point, as though science is doomed forever not to understand things. And I think there may be people who take that love of mystery and actually turn it into an active desire not to understand. They actually prefer not to understand. But science has mystery of its own, and it has magic of its own. And the mystery of science, if you turn it around, it becomes a challenge to further work. Scientists love mystery, not because they want to lie down underneath it and give up in a defeatist way. Scientists love mystery because it's a challenge to solve the mystery. And there's always the hope, which has so far always been realized, that when the mystery has been solved, it will open the curtains to yet more mysteries that are even more tantalizing, even more mysterious, and even more beautiful. So that's one positive way in which we could look at this problem. To return to rather more mundane matters and reply to some of the things that have been said, I don't know whether Ray Comfort is dishonest or stupid. I suspect stupid. But there are others who have given us a very honest testimony as to what we're up against. And the one I'm very fond of quoting, because he really does seem to me to be honest, is Kurt Wise. And many people may have read some of Kurt Wise, and in case you haven't, I'll repeat briefly. He is a geologist. He has a PhD from Harvard, which he earned under the supervision of Stephen Jay Gould. He is a young Earth creationist. He knows a lot of geology, he knows a lot of paleontology, and he has demonstrated that he is honest with respect to, for example, certain geological specimens which were alleged by creationists to be, I forget what, but some sort of creationist thing. And he looked at it, he looked at it as a, I don't know, was Newton's balls, or I mean Noah's balls or something like that. He looked at it and pronounced that this is a known geological phenomenon, and so to me that demonstrates his honesty. But his honesty is pitilessly demonstrated in a manifesto that he wrote in a book which I think is called Only 6 Days, which is a book of chapters by different people defending the view that the universe, that the world is only a few thousand years old and was created in 6 days. And Kurt Wise describes his own autobiographical journey when he realized that his geology, as learned at Chicago and Harvard, was conflicting with his Bible-based religion. And he realized that he had a straight choice. Either he had to throw away science and throw away all his, as he described it, his hopes and dreams of becoming a science teacher, or he had to throw away his scripture-based religion. And he said, that night, in great sorrow, I tossed into the fire all my dreams and ambitions. And he then says, in a sort of final peroration, if all the evidence in the universe supported an old Earth, I would be the first to admit it, but I would still be a young Earth creationist, because that is what Scripture says. So that is an absolutely explicit admission, indeed proclamation, that if it's a toss-up between scripture and evidence, this highly educated man is going to go with scripture. Well, he's highly educated, apparently intelligent, although one has to doubt that. But if he is honestly telling us what certain kinds of human minds are capable of, the sort of doublethink that certain kinds of human minds are capable of, then presumably there are a large number of other people who are not so well educated and who probably would follow Kirk Wise in rejecting the evidence if scripture told them to, but they don't even know what the evidence is, and so it's much easier for them. One or two other things I thought of saying. There is a suspicion of science, which I think has been touched upon already, and it's partly because there are various reasons. I mean, partly sometimes people blame science for things like hydrogen bombs, but it's, I mean, sort of shooting the messenger, but it's also partly that newspaper headlines seizing on to things which are supposed to be of interest, like medical breakthroughs, what causes cancer, what doesn't cause cancer, and so on, will tend to headline the latest research finding, which may or may not be particularly reputable. It may be just one little finding in a whole ongoing series of research, and it may not mean very much outside the context of all the other research that's going on. And so one week you'll read in the Daily Mail or whatever the Irish equivalent is that X causes cancer, and then the next week you'll read that X is good for you. And so the response is, well, who are we to believe when the scientists can't even agree among themselves? Wipe out the whole of science. Science isn't worth listening to because these headlines contradict each other. And to combat that, I think you really do need to teach people that scientists are not authority figures to be listened to be believed as though they were priests. Scientists do use the method of science, which is a critical method. It involves evaluation of evidence, repeating experiments, peer review, all the sorts of things that make science so valuable, that make science the best method we've got of getting at the truth, even if it's not perfect. And just to give a very simple illustration of how contradictory results can arise, the dose-response curve of almost anything on human health is likely to be, I mean, if it does you any good at all, it's likely that too much of it isn't going to do any good. So there's going to be some sort of a U-shaped function, an inverted U-shaped function. So if you've got an inverted U, then depending upon which part of the U you're on when you do your experiment, if you're on that part of the U, then X is good for you. If you're on that part of the U, X is bad for you. There's no general rule that says X has to be either good for you or bad for you. It's both, depending upon how much of it you have. I mean, that's a very, very simple example. And it's only one of many possible reasons why scientific findings, if reported in isolation by irresponsible newspapers, will tend to lead people to throw up their hands and do a sort of plague on both your houses reaction and simply reject science altogether. Science does make mistakes. Science learns by correcting its mistakes. But the scientific method, which is what people should learn, the scientific method is the best method we have for getting at the truth. And sure as hell, if science can't get at the truth, nothing else can. Just tell a story that Michael Shermer has written somewhere. He was investigating one of those people who claims to be able to communicate with the dead. And he worked out what particular conjuring trick this man was using. He went onto the stage and debunked the man in front of the audience that had just been fooled by him. So he explained to the audience how he was doing it, and was clear that the man was a fraud. And afterwards, Michael Shermer was attacked viciously by members of the audience because they didn't want to know how it was done. They would rather stay with their illusions. People would rather believe a falsehood, a comforting falsehood, than actually be told. this really rather interesting point about, you know, what particular trick this man was doing.
Does anyone in the audience want to ask a question to one of the panel? Gentleman there.
Professor Dawkins, this question is for Professor Dawkins. I'm a Muslim, and
Could you wait so I can see you?
I'm here, right at the back. I don't see why science should lead to atheism, because I am aware of scientists. I know some scientists who are serious scientists, and they are not young earth creationists, and they believe in a religion. They choose to follow that path. Coming to my question, Professor Dawkins, you referred to a certain Professor Kirk, who was honest about science. He stated that even if all evidence pointed to an old earth, he would still believe in a young earth because the scripture says so. I would like to ask you to be honest today and accept that even if all the evidence pointed to a designed universe, you will still go for chance, because in your book you accept that the universe appears to be designed. In one of your interviews, which I was watching today, you accept that there is design in the universe. So would you like to be honest today and say that no matter how much evidence points to design, you'll still go for chance?
How dare you say How dare you ever accuse me of explaining life and the illusion of design by chance? Darwinian natural selection is the very opposite of chance, and if you think it's chance, you don't understand Darwinian natural selection.
So do you believe that this universe is designed?
No.
So how did it come about? Would you like to explain? I'm naive. I'm a student. I'm trying to learn.
Okay.
Would you like to explain, if it's not designed?
Let's divide the question into two. There's how did the universe come about, and the answer to that is, it's a question for physicists, and I can give an amateur answer because I'm a biologist. The second question is, how does life, which has a much, much more powerful illusion of design. The universe itself doesn't have a very powerful illusion of design, as William Paley himself observed, but life does, and the illusion of design in the case of life comes about through evolution by natural selection. And natural selection is a very, very powerful generator, a very, very powerful engine of creating an illusion of design. But the thrust of your question is, would I be honest and admit it if the evidence went the other way? The answer is yes, I would be. I've always said so. I'm quite uncertain what that evidence could possibly look like. But if there really were good evidence for a designer of life, say, or a designer of the universe, then I would accept it. As I say, I find it very hard to imagine what it would look like.
And we can talk about this another time, but my question was very specific. You seem to be accepting the notion of design in that interview. I don't know what that
means.
means.
It's an illusion. There's a
Right.
powerful illusion of design.
Right.
And I said that.
Okay, thank you.